times I'm asked now, where are you getting the support? How come you're doing so well on the internet? What's going on around here? And I said, well, it just might be that freedom is popular.
Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, not so long ago, 56 men endeavored to create something that the world had rarely seen. A republic in which those that would govern would do so by the consent of the governed. And from these humble beginnings, a nation gained prominence and stature in our world, a land called America. Formed by the tempest-tossed, the refuse, the dispossessed souls from troubled lands, seeking solace under the gaze of liberty and the divine providential wisdom of a constitutional form of government. A place in which all men were created equal, and that government should remain a humble servant whose desire and purpose ensured the perpetuity of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet today many are sorely vexed in this land of ours, angered by the wars with no end, troubled by the lands that our soldiers are in, saddened by the mounting tolls in lost lives, lost labor, lost liberties, and sadder still, the uncertain future for those who will succeed us. Now the casualties from the unconstitutional exuberance our forefathers warned us about are knocking upon our doors. How do we now say to the entanglements in the affairs of 191 nations in the world? How do we say no to 737 military bases in 63 countries? How do we say no and enough to the war profiteers and their $600 billion adventure that is now close to costing every man, woman, and child in this great nation $1,000 annually? How do we say no to runaway inflation that historically was the hallmark of despotism, of third world dictators and banana republics? How do we say enough to the ever-encroaching Leviathan that clamors for more of our attention, more of our treasure, more of our lives, and finally more of our liberties? How do we as a nation say no to the sickness that has infused our Lady Liberty, who now lacks the strength to embrace her lamp of liberty beside the golden door? Ladies and gentlemen, we as a nation must now say yes. We must say yes to our Constitution and the rule of law. We must say yes to real money, not the fiat empire that has enslaved us. We must say yes to the principled discourse that filled the hearts and minds of our citizens in times past, in the days of Washington, Lincoln, Kennedy, and Dr. King. Most assuredly, the doctrine and simplicity of freedom that formed us in 1787 can ultimately work in 2008. But we must say yes to someone who has always said yes to our Constitution. I stand before you today to humbly implore you to stand with millions of others across this great land in support of Congressman Ron Paul. I encourage you to please take a moment to educate yourself about a simple man from southern Texas who long ago took the mantle of responsibility upon his shoulders. A man who has been reelected 10 times by his constituents. A leader who was resolute against the unbridled, unproven, and unconstitutional excesses of war in foreign lands. A veteran who, despite his stand against the lobbyists of the war machine, has captured the affections of the men and women in uniform in Iraq, Afghanistan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and numerous other lands. A physician who lovingly wears his well-earned moniker, Dr. No, with pride because of his constant denials to the moneyed interests who incessantly sought his complicit approval in their loathsome exercise of subverting our Constitution. An economist who understands the follies and manifold dangers of institutions like the Federal Reserve and its enforcement arm, the IRS. A Republican who has been praised by former congressmen, diplomats, doctors, clergymen, and even former President Ronald Reagan because of his unity of purpose, simplicity of vision, and his unwavering devotion to our nation. I, like Dr. Paul, feel that America's future can be bright again. But America has slumbered far too long. In the folding of her hands and the aversion of our eyes, our once humble servants have become our fearful masters. It's time to say yes to a simple, honest man who has spent his life saying no to these fearful monsters. I humbly implore you to support Dr. Ron Paul for President of the United States. Thank you and God bless.